Okay, so good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Recruitment Startup Hub launch event. I can see a number of attendees now joining this live webinar this morning. I'm delighted to be joined by all of our official partners who have agreed to come on this journey with us. Today, we're very excited to be launching officially the Recruitment Startup Hub. Today's event is very much to bring to you a full overview of what we're trying to achieve, the help and support that's available to the recruitment industry. We've also got a very special panel event. I'm sure you can see all of our industry experts that have joined me today. We're going to be hearing from each and every one of them and how they can support you in your recruitment journey and how to set up a successful business. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. Today's session is recorded and we will be issuing out a full recording of this webinar via our social media platforms and to all of the attendees of today's webinar. We'll also be issuing a follow-up email with some of the Q&A that we might get from today's session as well. So the way in which we're going to run, very shortly I'll be giving a brief overview of who we are, a little bit of an overview of our partners. Then we'll be going into a full panel event. So we've got some great questions that have been submitted prior to today's session, and we'll be getting some answers from our key partners. And then we've got an interactive Q&A session. So that'll be the opportunity for all of our attendees today to submit their questions through the Q&A session, and we'll get some answers to those questions to help and support you. And then I'll be providing to you an overview of how we move on from here, what the help and support looks like, and what the next 6 months will have in store for all of our attendees. So a very warm welcome to all of our partners. A little introduction from myself. My name is Vincent Seddon. I'm head of sales here at Simplicity, and we provide funding and back office support to the recruitment industry. I'm also delighted to be joined by Alex Moyle from Recruiting Gym. They're a leading recruitment training and development company, and they're here to support you on your journey. We've also got Ben Brook from Growth Recruits. They specialize in all aspects of marketing to help and support, get you off the ground and dress your shop window for the future. Marie Pegram from Recruitment Accountants, specializing in all things accountancy and of course taxation, along with back office and business growth too. We've also got Danny from Partners and a chartered insurance broker providing specialist insurance along with employee benefits and risk management. We've got Simon from Brabner's, a leading independent law firm providing a full service and legal offering to the recruitment industry. We should also be joined at some point by Mark from World First, specializing in international payments and all things banking. We've also got Kieran O'Donoghue from HR Champions, providing HR and employment law. And then we've also got our guest speaker today, Ian Knowlson, industry expert and also representing talents. So a huge amount of support, and thank you to all of our partners who are joining us today and also on our journey moving forward. I'm also delighted to say that the ecosystem that we're creating today is going to have an online platform version, and that is now live. So if you haven't seen the website already, please do head over to the online version of the Recruitment Startup Hub. This has been created as an ecosystem to provide regular content, which will be refreshed on a monthly basis, and also some really useful information from all of our partners. And should you want to have an introduction to any of the partners today, that is the platform to head over to get that information and of course register your details. At the end of today's session, I'll also be talking to you about a series of virtual and in-person events that will be taking us through the next 6 months. And that will be a mixture, as I said, of virtual and in-person so that people will get the opportunity to come together and meet face to face. So let's get things moving forward. We'll move straight into the panel event, if I may. We're going to be looking at a series of questions that have been sent through to us from attendees today and also from viewers that may be watching us on the recorded session. So thank you so much for all of your questions that you've submitted. I'll try and put them into a bit of an order that creates a journey that you might go on as a new recruitment business. So quite often we talk to recruitment businesses businesses that are setting up. Normally, these are successful recruiters that have maybe worked for another company in the past and want to set up on their own. It can be a very lonely world when you take that jump out of a recruitment business and become an entrepreneur overnight. Sadly, there is no textbook that you can purchase or instruction manual to become a successful entrepreneur. But hopefully we can create that as a group of industry trusted suppliers. So one of the first questions that we always kind of come to is what is the fastest way to drive a new business? And this is a question I think I'm going to probably come over to Ben at Growth Recruits to grab an answer from, and we'll maybe get a couple of other opinions from some of our panelists. But Ben, from your perspective, and when it comes to marketing, what is the fastest way to drive a new business and get set up?
So I think there are a couple of things here, a couple of strings here. I think in terms of channels, I think making sure your website and your as you were talking before, for instance, your kind of your shop front set up and making sure you've got a presence that kind of shows off what you do, what makes you different in the market. I think in terms of going to market, channels that can drive new business kind of in the short term. I think outreach is still something that we support our startup recruitment companies with. Understanding who your ideal customer profile is, what challenges they're facing, and then building messaging that resonates and hits at the right time. That's always going to drive immediate conversations. Building partnerships as well. So like what we're all doing here today, having kind of strategic partners to fall back on, piggybacking on the back of larger audiences, especially if you're starting up, is a really good way of getting in front of new customers and things like that. So I think outreach, we could go into a whole session on outreach, but maybe exploring some warm cold outreach, developing partnerships and making sure you've got your online presence, such as your website and your social media, up and running. So people can refer to what you do, and you can refer people to content and things like that as you're building outreach.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, Ben. So from a Growth Recruits perspective, then, all of those things that you just mentioned that a new business need to be aware of, how can you support them to get to that point very quickly?
Yeah, so we work with a wide variety of recruitment businesses across multiple sectors on everything from establishing a brand presence and establishing a website from scratch to helping more established recruitment businesses grow that website through search engine optimization, email marketing. So we offer the full stack of marketing services. So whether you're just getting off the ground and have no presence, we can help, or whether you're established and you're looking to compete on Google or build your email list, create value-led content, something we preach here and something we see work across all our recruitment clients. We can help. And if you're struggling with outreach and how to go to market with a message, we can also help identify your ideal customers and help you get that message in front of them.
Super. Thanks, Ben. So it sounds like everything that a business might need is available from yourselves when it comes to dressing your shop window. Okay,
Sure.
super. Thank you. So Marie, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay. So following on from there, when it comes to setting up a successful set of accounts, most of the time people don't think of this until the end of 12 months or maybe even 9 months after that when it's time to submit. So what would be your biggest piece of advice when setting up a new business from an accountancy and tax perspective?
So once you've incorporated, I would recommend getting some systems in place. So Xero, just set up Xero. It's a simple accounting software. It's easy to use. It's aimed at business owners, and it just stops you playing around with spreadsheets and manually drafting invoices. I come across quite a lot of startups that fabricate invoices on Word and use Excel to manage their expenses, and they spend so long doing that and trying to reconcile it and work it out that actually just invest in something like Xero, and that's top tip.
So download Xero.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I think that is quite a common thing that we see across all businesses, not just specific to recruitment either. A key piece of software to help you on your way. Okay, so specifically from recruitment accountants, Marie, what would be the key thing that you would be able to provide to somebody setting up a new business?
Well, I think it's setting up on the right track. So when you incorporate, you can do it yourself, or you can get an advisor or an accountant to do it for you. But it's thinking about how to structure your company to allow the flexibility and be as tax efficient as possible. So when you incorporate, you can have different share structures. So you can consider alphabet shares, for example, or bringing in your partners, so spousal shares, and that will help utilize different tax allowances. And if you get that right from the start, then you're already utilizing all the different thresholds and saving tax from the word go. Also, looking at all the expenses you can put for your business as well. That's often quite a common question I get asked, is that, what can I put through the business and how can I save more tax? And the other thing is to make sure you register for the right taxes as well. So there is 4 main taxes that you need to register for. The first one is corporation tax. That will automatically be, you'll register for that when you incorporate your company. There's VAT, so people can voluntarily register for VAT once you hit a turnover, and then once you hit a turnover of £85,000, you have to register for VAT. But most do it at the start. It takes a while. HMRC take a number of weeks to give you a VAT number, so I recommend getting straight onto that as quick as possible, and then you can start claiming back all the VAT on your purchases. There's PAYE, so if you're looking to pay yourself a salary as a director or an owner of the business, or if you're looking to employ anyone, then you may register for PAYE. Again, that's relatively straightforward and you can do that quite quickly. And then it's your self-assessment. So you may already be registered for self-assessment and doing your own personal tax return, but if you're not, you are required to let HMRC know by the 5th of October that you need to do a self-assessment return.
Thanks, Marie. And a question I think that's popped into my head is, what are the main pitfalls if somebody sets up a company and they wait until after their first 12 months and then maybe a month before their 9-month window of submitting accounts? What are the main disadvantages of doing that?
Firstly, it's trying to get your records straight. So if you haven't got complete records and things, it's a nightmare for when you need to get someone to do your accounts and tax return. It may cost you more money. So if you get something like Xero set up right from the beginning, everything's all kept in order and you understand your performance of your business. Secondly, is your tax savings, because once you've lost your thresholds, you've lost them. And once you've submitted accounts or your corporation tax return, you've lost anything that you can claim through that. So I'd recommend seeking advice, or at least looking around to see what you can put through the business to save you as much tax as possible, because every penny helps. And as Vincent mentioned earlier before he came on this call, no one likes paying tax. You can save it as much as possible, and that's great.
It's all about the bottom line. Okay, thanks, Marie. So Alex, from a training and development point of view then, so for anybody setting up a new business, all of these things that we're talking about today are perhaps, quite big and important to setting up a business. But if you want some support and guidance in getting yourself moving through those first 24 months, what's the best approach to take from a training and development point of view?
I think, having worked with hundreds of startups, I think the first thing is, even if you've worked for an existing agency and you think you're a good recruiter, the likelihood is you've got gaps. So, and often when we're successful in an agency, we take for granted the fact that when we pick up the phone, people know who we are. We take for granted the fact we get flipped opportunities or candidates from colleagues. And when you're on your own, you are on your own. And so the gaps in your ability to source, your gaps in the ability to manage risk and control opportunities or business develop become exposed. And so what I also see is it's understanding those gaps. And we see a lot of people entering the industry that have made, in my day, people would have had 5 or 10 years before they start their own business. We now get people that make that move at 6 months, and it all looks easy when you're working for a big firm, but it's not when you're standing on your own. And I guess it's making sure you've got a network of informal learning through peer groups like Rec and Team and other sort of organizations, but also seeking out courses and trainers that can help you with specific aspects of working a desk.
Great. And would you say that a regular amount of time is required to invest into training and development? Because quite often entrepreneurs are very focused on the forward, what's coming next, how am I going to make the next book? But, is it important to take some time out and focus on the business from the outside in?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways of looking at it. I think when it comes to recruiting skill, the best recruiters are always looking to see how they could have done it differently. And so a lot of learning in recruitment is looking back through the rearview mirror. So if you lose an opportunity, my mum always used to say, if you point a finger, there's always three fingers looking back at you. And typically, if you have a deal that goes south, you know, and you're pointing at the candidate being unreliable or the client being unreliable, it's really important to look at yourself and with a critical eye and see how you could have done things differently or anticipated or mitigate that risk. And so sometimes it's about dedicating time and doing webinars and finding online courses, but often it's about really honest reflection of where your own failings could have been and what you might be able to do differently next time.
Great, thanks, Alex. Okay, so coming over to Simon at Brabner's, if I may. When setting up a business, quite often there may be more than one shareholder or one director. What are the key things that a business need to be aware of when setting up share agreements?
Well, I suppose the first thing is to say that a shareholders agreement isn't a legal requirement, so you don't need to have one by law. But I think most people would advise any business that's got more than one shareholder in it to have a shareholder agreement. And the reality is it just regulates the relationship between the shareholders. So if you think about, you know, obviously small businesses, the director and the shareholder, often the same person, the chances of them falling out are obviously non-existent because everyone's thoughts and objectives are all aligned. But as soon as you start adding two or three, and often people come together in these situations because of previous relationships and friendships. And whilst that's great, you know, what a shareholders agreement does, it just gives you the ability to have some certainty about how that relationship should be governed as you move forward. Because obviously in those first early weeks and months, everyone will be pulling in the same direction, hopefully. Everyone ultimately will be contributing to the success of the business. But often what you find is that at some point, one of the parties will perhaps not be performing as the other parties want them to. And so really a shareholders agreement really looks at, you know, the worst case scenario, so disputes, you know, what can shareholders get from a management perspective in respect to the business? You know, what happens if there's a deadlock situation? So you've got two shareholders that both own 50% of the shares. What happens if you don't agree? Same if you've got four shareholders with 25 and two decide one thing and two decide the other. How do you break that deadlock? The shareholders agreement will tell you ultimately how you do it, and it'll deal with the transfer of shares in a situation where you decide to go either in different directions or you decide to exit and to sell your business on to a third party. And like most good legal documents, the reality is it sits in a drawer and you hope that you never need to get it out of the drawer and look at it and that everything just sails along smoothly. But ultimately, it just gives you that certainty, that protection that should things not be going in the right direction, you have a document that you've all agreed to when times were good that sets out how you resolve the dispute, the problem that has arisen at that time. So it's often one of those things that's in the nice to have pile or list when you set up a business. But I think if there's more than one of you having ownership of the business, then my view would be it can be a bit of a false saving, because I think whilst you're all getting on well, that's the time to agree what's going in that shareholders agreement. And as I say, put it in the drawer and hope you never need to look at it again.
And is that something that you would suggest doing right at the very beginning, Simon, to get that done out the way so you can concentrate on moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer ultimately in respect to that. It depends on the circumstances. But my view would be to do it sooner rather than later, because I think it will flush out any problems or any disputes or any difference of opinions, which I think it's important to know about at the start of the journey rather than part way through. So my view would be always to do it as soon as you possibly can if you've got more than one shareholder coming into the business.
Great. And if we've got attendees today that are listening and there is more than one shareholder and they require some support, I'm assuming that they can come to you and get that support, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a questionnaire that ultimately is a really good thought-provoking document that allows you to sit as the 2, 3 or however many number of shareholders there are and have a conversation. And that really works well in sort of smoothing out any problem areas and allows us to put together a document relatively efficiently.
Super. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've spoken about the legal aspect. So let's have a look at what happens if things go wrong. What can we do about that? So when we look at insurance, Danny, I'm going to come to you if that's okay. What kind of things does a new business need to be aware of and have as a priority when it comes to liability insurance?
Yeah, hi everybody. Yes, we've got sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so I might cough and splutter my way through this a little bit. So we have a specialist practice at Partners, and we focus purely on the sector. So we've got quite a lot of experience in dealing with companies all shapes and sizes. You know, in particular with startup companies, you know, they're the guys that really need the support and advice around these things. So, but with regards to exposure, so this is what we look at as an insurance broker providing this relevant level of advice, is the exposures that exist for agencies. And so currently within the sector, we do see cyber as the biggest risk that exists within the sector. You know, so we provide a lot of sort of risk management and support around those sorts of things. But really to kind of take it back to basics. So as a bare minimum, what we look at is the legal requirements that are required for an agency to get started. We look at the commercial relationships that have to be considered as well. And of course, the exposures that are referenced there as well. So from a legal perspective, the only cover that they will need legally is employer's liability, but that's provided they have staff. So if you don't have any staff as a startup business, then you don't need that unless it's required by contract. So as a bare minimum, you're looking at professional indemnity and public liability cover to get yourself started. Now, from the commercial element to it, you know, your clients that you're engaging with, they might want you to have specific covers on PI, public liability, are definitely them, and as I mentioned, employers' liability as well. So, but what I would say on the commercial side of it as well is to be that startup business that has a credible insurance policy behind you. You've got that formal document. It gives you that advantage over the company that doesn't have that. You know, so there are various things to consider there as well. But certainly above and beyond those, the bare minimum requirements that I've just referenced there, I've spoke about cyber. You know, it is a big risk within the industry. Directors and officers, so that's protecting the business owners against any sort of legal action that's brought against them. And also they might want to consider some key person cover. So this is in the event that the business owner or one of their big billers is unable to work for whatever reason. So really they're the headline ones there as well. And you know, Partners, and we work with simplicity, and what we can provide is an easy access to obtaining these covers. So you can either do it online and obtain from the specialist discount that Simplicity customers can benefit from, or you can actually speak to a person, believe it or not. So you can come through to me or one of the team to access any of these products, or even just to get some advice.
Great, thanks, Danny. Okay, so moving over to the difference in UK trade and international trade. Mark, thank you very much for joining us. It'd be great to understand from your perspective, when a business is set up, what consideration should a new entrepreneur give to overseas trade?
Yeah, hi Viz, and hi everyone. So I suppose the first thing is that any new business wants to get paid and wants to get paid as quickly as possible as soon as they start providing a recruitment service. And there are a number of opportunities overseas in terms of recruiting into international markets, so not least the US, where the recruitment market is very buoyant, but also the fees are very high. So there's an opportunity to generate good margin and provide service into the US market. But one of the areas where it can become quite complex is in obtaining local accounts. And frankly, for any new startup, actually getting a bank account full stop can be a challenge. So, you know, we provide a financial platform and a network of local accounts that give businesses a local financial footprint that are connected to all of the local payment rails that enable their customers to pay them quickly, locally, and at low cost, and also to manage any tax liabilities or refunds that might arise within that local market as well. So you know, we provide pounds accounts in the UK, US dollar accounts locally in the US, euro accounts in Europe, for example. They're The local accounts are available in 14 different currencies. So if any business is looking to operate domestically or internationally, and they need an account quickly so that they can start to financially operate, we can provide them with that local network of accounts.
Okay, super. And when it comes to doing business overseas, how easy is it to do business overseas? Quite often when people say, oh, you know, are you thinking about export? New business owners might think actually that's a little bit too far to think right at the beginning. But how easy is it for a recruitment business to do business overseas?
I mean, you know, obviously you need to have some sort of understanding of the market that you're entering into. There are some firms that we deal with that are, you know, very much in their infancy, that start up, that specialize in local markets. It's about having the right contacts and understanding the industry sectors and how they operate within international markets. But I mean, essentially it's reasonably straightforward. I mean, the US market, as an example, the average fees in the US are, you know, like 30 to 40%. You know, it's a pretty easy pitch when the average fees are, Marie, you can probably confirm this, but 20-25% in the UK if you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I'd say a little bit lower, maybe.
little bit lower, maybe.
Yeah.
There you go. Maybe we're getting charged too much.
Everybody's off to set up a US recruitment company now.
But you know, it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? I mean, you know, we've learned, you know, post-COVID in particular, that we can operate multinationally without barriers. We can communicate digitally through these sorts of channels. It's much easier now to provide a service on a global scale. Your one complexity is time differences, you know. So you know, when you're trying to get on a call with somebody in the US, you know, your meetings are going to be between sort of 2 p.m. and probably 8 p.m. As opposed to 9 a.m. You know, I work for a global business. I'm used to managing that sort of thing. You know, try getting Australia and the US on a call at the same time. You know, you're going to upset somebody. But you know, you do have to take into account sort of time differences and things like that. But actually, you know, the process of entering a new market, if you've got the knowledge to do so, is really quite straightforward. It's probably more complex to get the right financial setup so that you can operate financially in that market.
Great, thanks, Mark. Just want to stick with the international side of things, because it does open up a whole new marketplace for businesses who are setting up. So, Marie, from your perspective, when it comes to pulling together a set of accounts, what impact does doing business overseas have, if any?
It depends if they've got a corporation overseas or not. What we find a lot with startups is you tend to just dip your toe in the new market, decide if it's worthwhile. I think US is incredibly popular at the moment, and same with Canada as well, just because of the high margins and things. And it's generally perm recruitment that people tend to start off with, because it's easier, as the contract market in some of the countries is quite tricky, because you've got to get used to all the different legal requirements around putting contractors in place. But yeah, I mean, from an accounting perspective, it's just if you've got a branch out there, or you know, you just dip your toe and it's just dealing with foreign exchange, which is where Mark comes in and World First, and you want to hedge your risk against it. But if you've got another corporation out there, then that's when you want to start thinking about a group structure and structuring it in the right way to make sure that you know, you're protected as well as you understand your tax and legal requirements in those countries.
Great, thanks, Marie. And Ben, from a marketing side, what kind of things does a business need to be aware of when looking overseas?
Yeah, so I think it's very similar to kind of how you'd market yourself to businesses in the UK, right? You need to understand, yeah, the challenges and your audience and your market out there. And I think one of the things we try and push for international clients, or again, just even clients in going into new markets and things like that, is build out your case studies. I think social proof is social proof no matter where you are in the world. So yeah, an American organization understands social proof the same way a UK organization does, right? If you've done things in that country before, shout about it. If you've done things for you've placed roles for companies in a similar niche market, you shout about it. And I think there may be some some localization to do with some of the content. So if you are heavily, again, going to an American audience, for example, you're kind of making sure the content you're writing and thing is built for that audience, just like you'd adjust things for different markets. I think just having those considerations, but relatively the same as if you were trying to attract companies in the UK or Europe, right? You just got to make slight adjustments and focus on social proof. Like I said, case studies are the backbone of everything in marketing, especially in recruitment, right?
Absolutely, quite agree. Thank you. Thanks, Ben. And we might come back to the international side of things a little bit later on. But we've been through a bit of a journey here in terms of setting up a business, looking at how to protect the business, how do we market the business, how do we grow the business now? So in most cases, when you're looking at growing the business, that means increasing the resource within the business. And sometimes that can be quite difficult. So Kieran, I just want to come over to you from HR Champions to understand what are the key things that we need to be aware of, and how does an employer protect themselves when bringing in new employees to the business?
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. So first of all, if your business is growing and you're taking on staff, congratulations, that you're clearly doing well. I suppose as recruitment businesses, as recruitment consultancies, you should be really good at this. So there should, we shouldn't expect any problems or any errors. But we're dealing with people, and we can never sort of foresee what's going to happen. So one thing I would say is consistency, and that is any recruit, treating everybody in the same way. So if you're taking on people and you have a set of criteria that you're expecting or that you want to fulfill your role, that you sort of set it up so that you have almost like a mix, if you like, so that you can prove that everybody's been treated fairly and consistently. And we occasionally hear horror stories of sort of serial litigators. These people that apply for a job and end up not even getting recruited, but still taking the company to court for discrimination. It's rare, but it does happen. We at HR Champions, we've had to deal with a number of cases of that. So you just need to remember that employment law starts at the recruitment stage. I'm sure you all know that, but yeah. So all of those laws that apply to employees actually still apply to people at the recruitment stage.
Okay, great. And once that person has been employed, Kieran, and they start with a business, is there any piece of advice that you would give to a new entrepreneur that's perhaps taken on their first hire within their own business?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the failings we see quite often is just a really good induction. You're introducing somebody not only to a role, it may be a brand new role for them, but you're introducing them to a new company. As a business owner, you're going to have a certain way that you want to work and that you like to do things. So it's really important that your employees understand that. Corporate culture is very much top down. So, the boss sort of controls what the culture of the organization is. So I would say make sure that you have a really thorough induction, that there isn't, you don't leave any questions unanswered for the new recruit, because just leaving people to get on and do it doesn't work. You've got to have regular meetings, especially in the early days and the early weeks. Have regular meetings. Make sure there aren't any training gaps. People know what they're doing, and that they stay motivated because they've got goals and targets that they're trying to achieve. And that's also something that you can hold them accountable to. So you want to make sure that you've set achievable goals. They know what those goals are. They know what's expected of them, and you're constantly talking about those and reviewing those, and making sure that those people are progressing within your organisation.
Thanks, Kieran. I think that's great advice. Alex, you've raised your hand, so I'm assuming you've got some really good advice to add as well. So I'd like to bring you in, please.
Yeah, I mean, I was just echoing Kieran, really. When you're growing and bringing people in, having a consistent process that you expect people to follow, and then a commitment to training them to execute that, is really important to both attracting and retaining staff. And often a lot of the problems come when you have unhappy leavers, is there's a disconnect between the promises at point of hire and the reality of what happened during that process. And often the first hire that a new recruiter will bring in will be someone with no experience in recruitment. And so that's where at places like the Recruiting Gym, it's that foundational skills and development that not only helps develop the individual, but helps the business apply process and best practice. So I echo Kieran's points on that.
Absolutely. And I think, Alex, you're quite right. When we look at bringing a new person into a business, the recruitment industry has never been so tough to hire new talent and great talent. So starting as you mean to go on and retaining that talent within the business is really important. And I think most of the time in a recruiter's business, those new hires will be responsible for your turnover. So getting it right is quite key. Marie, I'm going to bring you in if possible.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to bring a slight finance angle to bring up, because it's quite a common question that we get asked with new startups is, what do I need to think about when I employ the first person? And it's quite a big responsibility to take on a new person. You're thinking, right, they're not going to bill for so long, so how much funds do I need to have to make sure that I can fund and, have the responsibility of paying their salary? So we tend to recommend that you have about 6 months worth of their salary banked before you take on a new employee. Then that allows them to 6 months to bill. And if you've got the induction process correct and the training right, then you should know within 3 months whether they're capable of billing or not. And then the other side of it is thinking about your commission structure. So again, I mean, I could talk forever about our commission structures and things like that, but seeing how that works and making sure that you've got your staff cost to net fee income ratio at the right point. And then also from a finance angle is actually having the ability and visibility to track their performance. So you're going to have certain KPIs that you're going to want to track, which are going to be, your CRM system may be able to track those. But also from a financial perspective, if you've got the Xero accounting software, you can actually track their billing. So you can allocate the invoices to individual names and you can see what deals they're making. So I'd get that in place right from the word go if you're going to, as soon as you bring on the first person.
Great, thanks, Marie. And back to Kieran.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on that point that Marie made there regarding, your sort of tracking someone's performance over that initial period. So that initial maybe 3 months or 6 months. I had a conversation with a client this morning actually, because this hasn't happened, and it was one of their employees had just reached their probation period. Despite what some people think, when you hit probation or you reach your probationary period, that doesn't make you bulletproof. That doesn't mean you're unsackable because you still are. But it's really important that during that initial period that the new recruit is fully aware as of their progress and whether or not making probation is likely or not. And if it isn't, they need to be told and some relevant training put in place. But if when you do get to 3 months, there's often an option to extend to 6 if you want. But really, if you're doing that, then maybe you've already failed. So just as I say, to echo, really that probation period is your opportunity to make sure you've got the right person and they're doing the job that you want them to do, the way that you want them to do. And that's regular meetings during that probation period. And when they reach probation, if they do make it, then make sure you sign them off and tell them and celebrate the fact. Because then you can really move forward with that.
Thanks, Kieran. It's great that we've got a group of recruitment experts, and the best question we talk about is employing people, which is super. But I'd still like to carry on with that question and come to Danny and then Simon. Danny, when bringing in your first employee to the business, obviously we need to look at liabilities and things. I know you touched upon this before, but do you want to give a brief overview of why it's important to have that employer's liability insurance?
Well, quite simply, it's a legal requirement. So if you're employing anybody at all, and if you don't have employer's liability cover, then you are trading illegally. So it's super important to get that. I keep using this word exposure, but from insurers' perspective, it's very low exposure employer's liability, because the likelihood of an individual that's working within an office suffering a claim, then it is quite low risk, really. So the cost of it is quite It's quite minimal, really. So if you have the policy in place with us initially, which is just those basic covers I referred to, you can start bolting on these different covers as that business grows and develops. So if you bring in any additional staff on, or you decide you want to have cyber cover, then that initial policy can then grow as that business grows as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Danny. Simon, from a legal perspective, if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry, Vincent, what you should have in place when you start.
So when bringing in a new employee into a business, what legal sides should we be looking at as an employer?
So ultimately, depending on who you're recruiting, obviously if you're starting up a business, you will probably have left your old employer, or you might be taking on an experienced person as a sort of relatively new recruit. You need to look at their restrictive covenants. You need to look at your restrictive covenants and just see what you can and can't do in respect of competing with previous employers. And then really from a legal perspective, it's all down to the contract of employment. So there's a requirement under the Employment Rights Act to give a Section 1 statement, which is really a very basic vanilla list of sort of salary, when you're going to get paid, disciplinary grievance procedures. So really basic information. And then beyond that, as Marie was talking about, if you're going to obviously pay commission, you need to think about your commission structure and your commission scheme and make sure that what Marie's advising you in respect of how that should be structured is mirrored in a contractual document. Give yourself as much protection as you possibly can and discretion around how things ultimately should be done. Again, look at protecting your business. So if they leave after you've trained them up, are you going to be spending money on training costs? Do you want the ability to recover some of those training costs if they leave very quickly after they've finished? Do you want to have restricted covenants in place to stop them taking big swathes of your clients, candidates with them when they leave? And then how do you deal with social media and, ultimately LinkedIn, which is a big tool within the recruitment industry? And, are there special rules you want to put in place in respect to the contract? So at a very basic level, a Section 1 statement, which sets out the very basics. But in most cases, you're going to want a bespoke contract of employment that deals with specific things like commission, restrictions, confidentiality, social media.
Super. Thanks, Simon. I think those points made around bringing somebody into the business are absolutely crucial, and hopefully our attendees have learned something from those answers from our partners. So thank you, everybody. So just as a reminder to any attendees that are listening to today's session, we do have the Q&A opportunity. I know some of you have already popped some questions in, but mainly for contact details for our partners. We will send those out to you after today's session. But if you do have any questions that you would like answering by one of the panelists, please pop those through on the Q&A session. And before we move on to the next session, which we will be bringing our guest speaker Ian Knowlton into to talk about the market, I'd like to just pop a little poll on screen to find out a little bit of information from those attendees that are with us today. So very shortly you will have a question that pops up on the screen. Really want to see two things: what stage you're at in your journey and which industry best describes you. And the reason we're interested to know this is so that over the next 6 sessions that we deliver, we can try and make these sessions bespoke to you, the journey you're on, and also the industry that you're in. So if you could give us a very quick answer to these polls that should be on your screen now, and then we will take this information into consideration moving forward. Okay, great. Thank you. So what we're seeing here is that 75% of the attendees on today's session are startup businesses. So hopefully you found the information that we've shared with you today, which is great. And then the next question is going to be around your industry. So that should be coming into your screen now. This is very high level, and apologies, I don't have an other section. So if you are other, please don't answer, and we'll take that into consideration. Okay, so quite a split across the industries too, which is great. So hopefully we can start to introduce some industry-specific themes within our series that we launch next month. So we've spoken very much about the practical and the operational support that you might need as a new business. What I'd like to do now is turn towards the market. So when we're entering into the recruitment industry and looking at the market, it can be quite a challenging industry to join if you're not already in it. And it may also be quite a challenging process to take a step out of an established business into a new business. So we are joined today by Ian Knowlson, who is our guest speaker and industry expert. Ian, I'd like to bring you in at this stage to add any comments to what you've heard from our panelists today, and then also start to look at the market that we're all working in at the moment, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Vincent, the first thing I would say is the advice you've given people in the last 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and when the group collectively, is probably worth a fortune. I would echo virtually everything that everybody has said. There's an awful lot of stuff that's come out, and I think the one thing I would say to anybody starting this journey who has a recruitment background is stick to your knitting. I think is one of the famous expressions. So by that I mean, don't try and become a HR expert. Don't try and become a legal expert. You'll become all of these over time, but lean on the people on this panel or people like them. What you are going to be really good at is talking to clients, finding jobs and filling jobs. And I think all of the experts on this call today have demonstrated, what they know. And I regret I'd actually endorse virtually everything that people have said, even the stuff that's the insurance and the legal stuff and not employing people, because they are accidents that happen all the time in recruitment. And I regret to say in the last 10 to 15 years, since I've been coaching people since I left Hayes, all of those instances that people have cited have actually happened. And so, I have had situations where people have employed a worker from a competitor, they've got a restrictive covenant, and they found themselves in a litigation. Actually, what they found themselves was being slapped with an injunction. And they were being co-sued. So Simon is absolutely correct in what he said. Alex gave some great advice as well when he was talking about, about people failing and focusing on what you do. And I think that's right. And as a business owner myself, Marie's absolutely right. When I started in my own business about 15 years ago, I was given a Word document and an Excel spreadsheet, Marie. But I tell you what, 100% on the bus. Xero is an amazing tool. I have better figures on where my business is today than I did as a director of Hayes running several £1 million throughput, which used to take about 4 weeks to come through. And when the data came through, it was 4 weeks out of date. Whereas with Xero, immediately. And there's a whole load and speak to Marie, she'll tell you about this, but there's a whole load of apps that you can get which will focus your expenses, connect it through. I could go through everybody who said something. It's brilliant. It's really good, Vincent. It's going to be recorded so they can go back and watch this, and pick it out. So yeah, brilliant. Well done. Well done, Simplicity.
Thanks, Ian. So looking at the market then, Ian, what would be your key, shall we say, let's focus on the good and the bad. So what's great about the market and what's not so great about the market at the moment?
Great question. So just to contextualize this, I coach people globally. So this morning started for me at 5:30, and I was running a training course with a group of leaders in Australia, in Sydney, and it'll end this afternoon at 6 o'clock when I finish coaching a guy in San Diego. And everything they said about rates in America, 100% spot on. Happy to confirm what Mark said. 35% fees are correct. And yeah, Mark, you are overpaying if you're paying 25% in the UK, but we can talk about that later. So coming back to the market, the principle is very simple. It's about supply and demand. Okay, so in the markets where the supply of candidates right now is quite healthy and a really free resource you can get. So two bits of free resource. One, the REC produce a jobs report with KPMG once a month. The figures for August came out on the 8th of September. If somebody wants the link, I'll put the link in the chat, and you can all go and have a look at that later. So that's on there. So that's the first thing I would say. And that will tell you what the current market is like. So if you're setting up a recruitment business this year in hospitality, that sector's booming. And if you're in construction, it's struggling a little bit. But again, if you're going to go into retail and logistics, then the next 3 months are your make or break months, because run up to Christmas, I seem to remember from recollection with the clients that I work with in logistics, they reckon they generate about 80% of their profit in the next 3 months and into January. So probably 4 months with returns. So that's a healthy part. And one thing that somebody hasn't pointed out, I think, but I'm sure it's the sort of thing that Marie and the accounts people will say, you need a business plan. You need to look at your cash flow, and you need to look at when your expenses are going out, when they're coming in, and that will have an impact on the market. And Vincent, you guys at Simplicity know all about cash flow, because that's what you're supporting people with on the temp side. So that's really quite critical. In the moment, it's sad to say, but the permanent market is down quite a lot. The figures for the last 12 months virtually, apart from a blip in April this year, all the figures are down, and last month permanent overall was down 11%. Temp is slightly up, so the markets are difficult, but most recruiters who are in the space right now will already know this. There are certain parts of the economy which are overheating still. And I've mentioned hospitality, healthcare. Don't be surprised. Right now, there's a lot of opportunity in healthcare. I'm talking primarily UK market at the moment. And what else had I noticed earlier? If you're in healthcare and in public services, there is some healthy opportunities there right now. Construction is slightly down, but people who work in construction will know once you get into beyond the summer months, it will decline slightly, but it won't fall off a cliff. Probably it goes into almost a low state, let's call it that, in January. But most people in recruitment know that, because there aren't too many people on building sites when there's ice and snow on the ground. But then it'll pick up very quickly after that.
Thanks, Ian. A question that's come in that I'd like you to answer, if you don't mind, very quickly, whilst we've got a minute left, is Dylan has asked, why do you think many recruitment startups fail to scale?
There are 2 phases of scale. I've written a blog on this, which I think is on your Recruiters Hub, but if not, we can make it on there. First is they don't get, if they're running temps, they don't get to a let's say a £2,500 a week throughput of margin. And that would equate to 10 grand a month, which is 120,000 a year. And to pick up on Marie's point about how you would make that up, typically a third of that should go to cover their own personal drawings. A third will go into covering the costs, so paying some of these people around the room here, but also rent, rates, things like that. And a third should be for growth. So they never get to the growth phase. So they're not generating 80 to 120,000 a year in terms of profit. We can dissect that at a later date as to why that is. That's probably the main reason. The second reason is picking up on what Kieran said, which is people go out and recruit people, but they recruit the wrong people. They don't do what Alex was saying and put in place good training. They don't do what Marie was saying about putting money to one side, and she's 100% right. I advise all our clients 6 months worth of cash in the bank, because you hope they're going to be performing after 3 months. But what you don't want them to do is you've got that umming and ahhing phase when it's not quite working out. So 6 months cash is important.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ian. I think that's really useful advice and very practical advice. So, Ian, thank you very much for joining us today and giving that overview. And it's quite nice that we've linked that back to what our partners have said. So I'm absolutely determined not to run over 12 o'clock, as nobody likes a session that runs over. So to wrap up today then, so The purpose of today was to launch the Recruitment Startup Hub, which is designed as a ecosystem for recruiters to set up a successful business. This is not the start and the end of the support. This is very much the tip of the iceberg. We are going to be moving forward now with a series of events to support you to set up your business. And the key theme of that is going to be how to be successful within the first 24 months of setting up a business. So the key constant thing that we will be offering is our online platform. This is a web-based platform that you will be able to go to get regular content that will be refreshed on a monthly basis. This will be provided direct from our partners. So this will be key things that we're seeing in the industry and key areas that you need to think about in order to be successful. That will also give you the opportunity to make direct contact with all of our partners that you've met today. And from there, hopefully get the support and guidance that you need to be successful within those first 24 months. On the back of that, we're also going to be running a series of events. As I said, over the next 6 months, we will have a virtual event, which will take place every month, and that will take you through a journey to become a successful recruitment business. So hopefully you can see on my screen at the moment an overview of what that series might look like. These episodes will take place monthly from October through to March. The first episode being how to set up and fund. That will be with ourselves here at Simplicity and World First. In episode 2, which is coming to you in November, you'll have the opportunity to see how to ensure you run a healthy set of accounts, and also all of those weird and wonderful things you need to be aware of when it comes to tax, and that will be with recruitment accountants. Episode 3 will be in December, how to take your business to market and create your shop window. That will be supported by Growth Recruits. Episode 4 in January, how to invest time in training and development, which is very kindly supported by Recruiting Jim. Episode 5 in February, how to protect and insure your business with Brabners and Partners and then finishing off this series in episode 6, what to be aware of when employing your own team and ensure healthy, sustainable growth to exit. That will be supported by HR Champions and Talents. And then in April next year, we will have a graduation event. This will be in person. It'll be a social event, and we will confirm the location of that when we have that in place. All of those sessions will be supported by the partners, but as I've just said, there will be key partners that we'll be putting the spotlight focus on. From today, we'll be sending you the recording out to all of the attendees that were part of today. We will also be hoping to share the attendee list with all of our partners so that they can look to make contact with you. If any of you don't want to share your contact details, please do reply to the email that we'll send out to you later today. And on behalf of all of the partners, we really do wish you a very successful start to your new business, and hopefully we can all support you to a happy, healthy exit strategy. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you all soon.